You in the name. Okay. I've been to the. Let's see here. Let's make sure we got it.
There should be a 3 minute and 27 second.
28-second.
Yeah, that should work.
All right. Is this it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Now, will the video show?
It will show on here, and I will make. So I'll be your tech.
Okay,
Are you doing it at the beginning or the end?
the beginning.
So I'll do it, and then I'm gonna have to step out. There'll be another formation person here who will kind of be
Okay.
here as your shepherd,
Okay.
like help if it looks like time is going long or whatever. They'll be they can chat folks up. So
Okay, so 9:45.
yeah, between 9:45 and 9:50, people should be free to start walking down the hall. Cool.
This is one from before we.
Hi, good morning. I'm okay.
Welcome, Catherine. You can see her on Zoom. Thanks for joining us. Well, anything else I need to know? You've got it all written out with you. You broke the whole thing out.
Well, I did, and then I was like, oh, I don't have any discussion questions. And so then there's, this.
That only you can interpret. Actually, I should say that you have beautiful handwriting, but I feel like when my kids get a handwritten note that's in lovely flowing script, and then they can't. They're sounding it out. All right, come on now. Did they not teach you how to read cursive?
My godson is 27 years old, and if you give him something cursive, he goes, oh, I can't. I'm like, what? Really?
I'm sorry, sweet summer child. You're gonna need this. Need to read this.
So how are things? You seem to be firing on all cylinders?
Yes, too many cylinders.
Yeah.
There are many files.
No.
It's all happening all at once. I feel like the announcements this morning is Christmas, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Thanksgiving. So got that. Thanks for coming back for another Sunday. Appreciate having you here.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Did some aggressive greeter get you to record your contact info in the back in the welcome
No,
book?
I will do that before I leave.
That would be great,
Yeah.
so that we can, we
And I
never
did give you a check.
radio tag anyone, and so we're very easy about the follow-up, but if you'd like to get to know us, we'd love to get to know you.
I will do that.
That's great, that's great.
I'll sneak it in.
Fantastic, yeah, there no sneaking necessary,
They'll be okay.
it's a melee down there, so.
Someday I'll come in town. I take care of my mother who's 93 now.
Oh, wow.
And so it's nice to have some day to go home and do everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's why I think the 8 o'clock service exists, is it used to be to hold down a particular niche in the worshiping life of the Episcopal Church. So it was more traditional and less music.
Yep.
Now these people who have a tea time at a certain time, or they have a day that they like to get to. Yeah.
I think there's something nice about it. I mean, I love music and I will come to one of those services someday. Hopefully bring my husband, but there's something really nice about quietness and contemplation.
Absolutely.
Waking up before everything else is swirling.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your sermon this week was great.
Thank you. It was a daunting one to preach.
Yeah, I bet it was.
All week long, wondering
How am I gonna do this?
yeah, well, I think we're all in a place, even probably people who hold the lever reluctantly, okay, now we're on the pins and needles. What might get broken,
Right.
and those of us that didn't pull the lever for the new president
Yeah,
know things will be broken. It's just which
Yep.
which things
right. And how soon?
and how soon. Yeah, it's very scary.
It is, I mean, we've been doing a gathering with friends and it is, it's.
That makes a pretty good friend myself.
Oh, perfect. In some ways you can't intellectually discern yourself through this. I mean, you can,
Mhm.
but I think that's why.
Yeah, you gotta. I know. we got a bag.
That's why.
Oh,
Yeah. Communities really important because it
Agreed.
just is, anyway.
Good morning. I am not. We have a better leader today. Marjorie's got us in her capable hands. I forget your name.
Jan.
Jan, my mom Pauline. Jan is new here, mom, so and she's a good kid. She goes from here to take care of her mom. So I make my mom, I make my mom come to church so that I can check on her, so that I can multitask, so,
There you go.
yeah. That's how I roll.
How's the school year going for your boys?
It's going, like, they seem, for the moment, more or less untouched by the election anxieties. There is a little bit of awareness of it, but like school is school and it's all consuming, so.
So you have one high schooler and one middle schooler?
Sophomore and sixth grade. Yeah. How old is your godson? You said 27?
Yeah, he's 27.
So he's been through all the school stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That's in his rear
Oh,
view.
yeah. Now he's trying to find, the grown-up job. Cause, he's created a life that he can't afford on the job that he has.
Although, this is America, so
Yeah, I know they don't.
we all have lives that we can't afford anymore, it seems like. Oh,
I was
that's,
listening to a story about New York rent on my way here.
Yeah.
And the broker's fees on top of like first, last month security deposit application keys. There's a broker's fee, so you have to pay anywhere from 15 to 30%.
what, no, you don't, that's
to a
not good,
broker.
that's not right.
And so there's a Gen Z council person on the council who just got a bill passed to break that law.
Leave it to Gen Z to walk in and be like, no. Absolutely not.
So it's gonna be really interesting.
Wow. Well, give it a couple more minutes and we'll get going. We're gonna be prompt today to give you the full kit and caboodle.
Oh, it's only 8:50.
Yeah, we're like on time. We're like ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
I'll offer an opening prayer.
Okay.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
How is, Barbara Moran, Ras? Is that how you say it? Moran? How is she?
Kind of hard because we're online, but doing okay.
Okay,
Yeah, like healthy,
okay,
surrounded by love and care.
okay.
Doing okay in that regard.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's been a hard transition. Good morning. How's it going, Sue?
I can't really see in dark.
Well, can any of us? If you found a way, let us know. So you're in the middle of a big renovation, or is it done?
It's more cosmetic and there's no construction, it's all.
Okay, so a zhuzh, a facelift,
Yeah.
a fun thing. Is it fun? No. Sorry.
8 interior doors,
Oh, that's construction.
which I did not know was as involved as it is. I did not know that. Yes. it's
They
one
say
of the
that home-
most expensive things you can do to your home is interior doors. And we put in 8.
When I was.
So you're like, well, there you are.
Was a universe I was not
No.
cognizant of.
They say that home construction projects are one of the top sources of marital strife. So I'm just prayers for you and your loved ones as you navigate this time of stress, and God bless.
We had the first floor
Yeah.
painted, every room on the first floor painted, so. Cause we were turning this empty bed, like we kept this bedroom just
I like to.
for the 5 days a year that we have a house arrest. I'm just like, no, we each need an office.
There you go.
So, yeah.
Protective the-
You can always throw an air mattress in an office.
It's great.
That's right.
Okay, now.
I came early to set up for the Altar Guild brunch, but not to make people feel like they weren't invited, but it was like the only way I could get get it done this morning. But doesn't that look nice? Like I feel like there's like a set like a yeah. Don't you wish you were on Altar Guild?
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Jan, I'm
We'll
allergic.
save you a slice of quiche if you want to come back.
Oh, all right.
Good morning.
Good morning. Morning.
How are you today?
Doing well. Yourself?
Chris Tegler?
Yeah.
He just walked past. He was just out in the hallway.
They're saying maybe I like some tea.
What do you want to sit next to you then?
Yeah, no, the speaker doesn't nobody globs onto the speaker. You need something?
Oh, she wanted it. How are you? But,
Oh, come open it.
okay, but she's been done.
It is.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
That's all right.
she can always go to the front office and they'll make sure that Chris is found.
Okay.
Bunch of projects. So you know, we stayed the same one.
It's weird to be early, Marjorie.
Yeah.
This is not a motif that I have lived in much in my life.
Racing out to what, the dentist? When I talked to you?
Eye doctor. So Jude and I went in for our annual eye appointment together, back to back, father, son. And he wanted to get glasses from the store, which is like, you know, open up your bloodline and just give them everything. And I was like, I'm tired of this like lame collection. So Aaron and I started shopping on Zillow. Have you heard of their glasses?
Their glasses are amazing.
They are, yeah.
So I want to take that one as well.
You will save so much money too.
But you know what I bought? Which is over in Northeast Minneapolis.
Sure.
They will hold a sample space, once a year.
Cool.
You can get price like for instance,
Well, that's
and they. are
That's
in
pretty good.
business To make your is looking.
well, that's the thing. Is like so many glasses store like pretend like they're stylish, and then it's just the same thing in like in metal or plastic.
I've seen, yeah.
Oh, the magnetic ones. Yeah, yeah. The cool thing about Zillow is that they're black owned, and I believe they make it everything in the States. I think it's like that they produce their work here. It's not like shipped in from China. So like 2 more reasons to shop with them. All right, I think we are 2 minutes out. All right. If I start early, there'll be like 16 people that walk in at 9:03. So also, I don't want you having to do a soft shoe routine at any point because you ran out of material. So we'll start right at 9. Welcome. Good to see you, friends. We will start on the nose at 9 o'clock. So 1 minute to go. And then that way we give Marjorie the full 45 minutes to hold your attention. But we're glad you're all here today. Glad to have you. And now that I've called us all to attention, you're all waiting for me to say something, aren't you? That was my mistake. I'm an amateur still. Well, today we are on session number 2 of A Call to Conscience. It's a 3-part series kicked off last Sunday. Thank you, Mark McEnroy, for the first overture in our look at the work of Dr. King through that collection, A Call to Conscience, which looks at his landmark speeches and writing. Today, Marjorie Grievous will be our speaker. You all know Marjorie from her role with us as our evangelist for spiritual healing. She's also a trained yoga instructor and someone who focuses in her life and vocation around the elements of spiritual healing, and also teaches at the University of Minnesota. And we're so grateful for the wisdom that she brings today as
a theologian in the world who thinks about issues of race and justice on top of spiritual healing. And so today we'll be looking at one of Dr. King's speeches as well. We'll play that in a moment. I'm going to open us with prayer and get us going, and then I will be stepping out. And Mark, I'll leave you as the proctor with eyes on the clock, just as a member of the Form Com. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Oh God, you made us in your own image and redeemed us through Jesus, your Son. Look with compassion on the whole human family. Take away the arrogance and hatred which infect our hearts. Break down the walls that separate us. Unite us in bonds of love and work through our struggle and confusion to accomplish your purposes on earth, that in your good time, all nations and races may serve you in harmony. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Marjorie, do you want to set up this clip or shall I play it and then you'll talk about it? I mean, either one is fine.
So I wanted to start today by showing what is a pretty famous clip of Dr. King's "I've Been to the Mountaintop" speech. I want to have played the last 3 minutes of the speech, and I want you to watch the video very carefully.
You say to America is be true to what you said on paper. In China or even Russia or any totalitarian country. Maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over that. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America gives the right to protest far right. So that's about saying I'm gonna let any dog or water hoses turn us around. I'm gonna let any injunction turn us around. I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now. Because I've been to the mountaintop. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over. And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you. But I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So tonight I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. My eyes have seen glory in the kingdom of the Lord.
I want to start this morning by doing something that often irritates a lot of people, but I want to start by acknowledging that I love to humanize my heroes. It is important to me to learn their feet of clay so that I understand that we are both imperfect beings made in the image of the same God. I bring up this point today because the great Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. has been given godlike status since his assassination 56 years ago. I've been to the mountaintop has long been my most favorite speech of his. I think parts of his story that never get told, and the story of his famous last speech is just as inspirational and mystical as the content of the speech itself. It has been noted that Dr. King attempted suicide twice as a young person and suffered with bouts of depression throughout his life. I want to quote from an article in Psychology Today written by Araya Baker, a noted public health advocate, journalist, and educator, who wrote about Dr. King. We cannot forget that Dr. King spent 15 years witnessing firsthand that there was no best way to debunk or disarm white supremacy. A doctorate didn't help, devout Christianity didn't help, colorblindness didn't help, disavowing armed struggle didn't help, invoking the innocence of children and the frailty of the elderly didn't help, not even critiquing the capitalist exploitation of poor whites helped, since he found that many wouldn't help themselves if it meant helping Black people. Imagine strategizing the most non-confrontational, religiously palatable, socially respectable method of advocating for your human rights and still getting beaten, spat on, hosed, cursed at, and having your family home bombed. Imagine protesting with other clergy, yet having horses still trample you and dogs still snipe at you. Imagine being deferential to authorities, yet still getting jailed and surveilled. Imagine many folks, including many who looked like you, telling you to tone it down. At the time of his assassination, at age 39, Dr. King's reputation stood in stark contrast to how we canonize him today. Public opinion of Dr. King was surprisingly low from around 1958, when he rose to national prominence after leading a successful boycotting movement in Montgomery, until 1968. A Gallup poll from 1966 revealed that almost 66% of Americans viewed him unfavorably. Looking back today, the public seemed almost committed to misunderstanding his intentions in service of preserving the status quo. An autopsy of Dr. King revealed that despite being only 39, life had aged his heart to resemble that of a 60-year-old. Dr. King himself once confessed, "I am afraid I have led the people into a burning house," end quote. For some personal context this morning, many young Black children of my generation who were raised in the church were often taught public speaking and presentation skills in the church. This happened through church plays, memorized scriptures recited in Sunday school, and special church days like the church anniversary or Women's Day or Children's Sunday. These live church performances were preceded by relentless practice runs at home by parents who made you do it over and over again, so they and all the elders in your family could beam with pride and joy at your excellent elocution after the church congratulated them on your performance. In my home, like many others, Dr. King was the standard bearer for how we should present ourselves before the church, in public, and before God. Memorizing his speeches was the norm for many of us in debate, speech, and drama classes in high school. Dr. King taught us public speaking, radical love, and how to present yourself to the world and how to present yourself to the world, regardless of what was done to you or said about you. He taught us what living as a Christian person of faith really looked like. Today, I think you can still hear his familiar cadence in many well-known Black Americans who were raised in the Black church. He created a mark of distinction beyond the church, beyond his education, and even beyond his professional accomplishments. This height we were to always reach for. His "I've been to the mountaintop" speech is prophetic. In it, he foreshadows his own death, which happens less than 24 hours later. He has arrived in Memphis weary, sick, and tired. Dr. King was originally scheduled to speak at the overflowing meeting at Mason Temple in support of the Black sanitation workers who were on strike. It has been said that he was possibly suffering from the flu. He asked his good friend, the great Ralph Abernathy, to speak in his place. Abernathy energized the crowd for half an hour. He then called and convinced Dr. King to come to the temple. He arrives to a standing ovation and speaks, feverish, exhausted, and with a sore throat, extemporaneously for over 40 minutes. His dear friend Ralph Abernathy seems to catch him at the end of his fiery last words as he spun around, seemingly unsteady. Abernathy grabs him and sits him down. Who is catching us now as we reel after an exhausting presidential election cycle that has left us feeling out of balance with and in fear of our own fellow countrymen? Who is our Ralph Abernathy catching us as we find our footing? A historic figure in his own right, Reverend Abernathy championed the causes of racial and social justice. He became president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference after bearing witness to the murder of his best friend the next day. Who is studying us as we make ready for what feels like, yet is not, a new battle in the fight for justice and equality for all God's people? It is important to note that also in attendance was Andrew Young, Jesse Jackson, Benjamin Hooks, and Reverend Samuel Billy Kyles, who had planned to host Dr. King for dinner the day he was killed. Just as Jesus had his 12, Dr. King also had his close-knit group of advisors, friends, and comrades in the fight towards true freedom. Dr. King begins this speech with an interesting premise of God asking him what age would he like to live in. He takes a panoramic overview through human history, noting significant moments of great change and shifts in thought, bringing about moments towards equality and justice. He notes the flight out of Egypt to the great philosophers of Greece, the Roman Empire, the Renaissance, his namesake, Martin Luther, Lincoln's signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, all the way to Roosevelt's famous quote on anybody. We are saying that we are determined to be men But whenever the slaves get together, something happens in Pharaoh's court, and he cannot hold the slaves in slavery. When the slaves get together, that's the beginning of getting out of slavery. Now let us maintain unity. Secondly, let us keep the issues where they are. The issue is injustice. End quote. Andrew Young, who had served in Congress, the United Nations, and as mayor of Atlanta, noted that Dr. King, being first and foremost a preacher, almost always quoted from Jeremiah, Isaiah, or Amos. Young noted that the God of the Old Testament was one of action, leading people out of slavery and bondage to a promised land, and they strongly identified with that. In the speech, Dr. King goes on to recall their fight in Birmingham against the imposing Bull Connor, who directed police to use dogs and fire hoses on young demonstrators, many who were legally children. This image of children being battered by the water and attacked by dogs turned public opinion in favor of the demonstrators. In 1963, 16th Street Baptist Church would be targeted with a bomb, killing 4 young Black girls because it had served as headquarters for moving people out and into planned demonstrations. Dr. King goes on to name a few men in Memphis who were leading the organizing of the sanitation workers. Reverend James Lawson was a longtime friend who had served as a missionary in India, where he deepened his belief in nonviolence. He had even been expelled from Vanderbilt due to his participation in a lunch counter sit-in in Nashville. Reverend Samuel Billy Kyles is thought to have been the last person to speak to Dr. King just before he stepped out on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel and was shot dead. He mentions Jesse Jackson, who had informed the economic boycott of specifically named brands and businesses as part of the protests. Well-known brands such as Coca-Cola and Wonder Bread were popular in the Black community, and withholding their buying power and directing it towards supporting Black-owned businesses was something Dr. King noted as being important in showing the ignored economic power of the Black community. Dr. King uses the story of the Good Samaritan as parallel to the Civil Rights Movement. And I quote, "And you know, it's possible that the priest and the Levite looked over that man on the ground and wondered if the robbers were still around. Or it's possible that they felt that the man on the ground was merely faking, and he was acting like he had been robbed and hurt in order to seize them over there, lure them there for quick and easy seizure." And so the first question that the priest asked, the first question that the Levite asked was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? But then the Good Samaritan came by and he reversed the question. If I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? End quote. Dr. King goes on to recall in grave detail the assassination attempt he barely survived after being stabbed in the heart with a letter opener by a mentally ill woman in 1958 when promoting his first book, which told the story of the Montgomery bus boycott. Although he received many well wishes from government officials, he recited in detail the one letter he remembered and held most dear. It was from a young white girl from White Plains who wrote she was happy he did not sneeze, as doctors had reported a sneeze would have killed him in the first 2 weeks following the attack. He then recalls all the gains in the civil rights movement he was able to witness or be a part of because he did not sneeze. As he comes to a close, he recalls that his flight from Atlanta to Memphis was delayed as they took special care the night before to watch the plane, making sure that nothing happened to it. And then all bags were properly checked very carefully for security before that was even common practice. He arrived in Memphis to report of the many threats against his life. His ending reminds me of this passage from Deuteronomy chapter 3, verses 23 through 29, when Moses is forbidden to enter the promised land. And I pleaded with the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, you have only begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do such works and mighty acts as yours? Please let me go over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, that good hill country in Lebanon. But the Lord was angry with me because of you and would not listen to me. And the Lord said to me, enough from you. Do not speak to me of this matter again. Go up to the top of Pisgah and lift up your eyes westward and northward and southward and eastward, and look at it with your eyes, for you shall not go over this Jordan. But charge Joshua and encourage and strengthen him, for he shall go over at the head of his people, and he shall put them in possession of the land that you shall see. So we remain in the valley opposite Beth Peor. Dr. King ends this speech with, and so I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. So that's all I have, but I wanted to offer I wanted to offer some time and opportunity to discuss to kind of discuss this a little bit. So I do have some reflection questions that I will offer you. So I have one question. When practicing nonviolence means we may face or be victims of violent acts ourselves, yet we must remain steadfast in our commitment and actions rooted in nonviolence. Is that still possible today, and does that work? Another question, who is in your squad? Who is in your tribe of trusted advisors? Who is more than an ally, but standing in true solidarity with you? Who will catch you when you falter? What biblical stories or scriptures never fail to inspire you? Which ones uplift you? Which ones bring you comfort? Number 4, how might you face the enemy with love and curiosity as we go into the holiday season, sitting at tables with our family for a long time? Trying to ingest food while having interesting conversation that won't bring about, strife and mayhem. So how might you face the enemy in your own bloodline, sitting at your own table in your own house, with whom you may share a name? But how do you face them with love and curiosity? Who are you being called to be or do as a person of faith in these present times? And what are the daily acts of loving kindness that you can commit to in spreading the all-encompassing radical love of God?
Thank you, Marjorie.
You are welcome. Anyone is free to, let me sit down so I feel less imposing. I'll say to you what I say to my students at the U. These were not rhetorical questions. These weren't rhetorical. You can't answer them. Yes.
One question is about who my trusted advisors are,
Mhm.
and I'm really thinking very hard about that. And I just have to say, you're one of them, because your remarks are so carefully thought through, and you're bringing wise insights from otherwise people in eras that were really tough times.
Mhm, mhm.
I just wanted to say that and appreciate what you said today. and
Oh,
your
thank you.
previous sermons.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I think that I think that we forget that people like Dr. King and Jesus, they did not walk alone in the great work that they did in the world, right? They surrounded themselves with more than allies, but people who really stood shoulder to shoulder, you know, with them in this work. I think we've all seen the famous photograph of the Lorraine Motel just moments after Dr. King is shot. And any one of the men that I named, who, if you don't know them, you need to go look them up, because they are really important in the civil rights movement, such as Dr. Jesse Jackson, he was there, Andrew Young, you know, was there, you know, all of these great figures. And so really that bullet could have taken out any one of those men, could have ended up being the canonized person that we have made Dr. King be today. And I think it's really important to note that, you know, at the time of his, he was not a popular person in America. To be really, really clear, like, I don't think there's, you know, unless you were old enough to remember the news and articles that came out at that time, he was not the beloved figure that he has come to be, even though he had won the Nobel Peace Prize, even though he had written many books, even though he had earned his doctorate, you know, had traveled, had spoken to heads of state. He was not a beloved figure necessarily.
Yeah, and one of the main reasons for that was that he turned his attention to economic issues.
Mhm.
And oh, good boy, that, I mean, that really begins to bite when you look at the situation at that time and today. And that was wrong. I mean, he's supposed to be for civil rights, not, you know, involved with a garbage man's right,
Mhm.
and preaching about economic
Mhm.
issues. And that just really put his popularity down the drain. I remember that vividly.
Mhm.
He also turned his attention internationally, and that made him unpopular. And I would just encourage us to look more internationally instead of, you know, we're just so focused on our border for obvious good reasons. But this is a worldwide trend,
Mhm.
and I think we can find wisdom in other countries and other ways of
Mhm.
bringing the voice.
Mhm.
We're planning on moving to Rome next year,
Mhm.
and my first instinct, and a lot of people's first instinct is, oh, lucky you, you're getting away from fascism. The right, no, Italy is a very fascist country. Like it's a worldwide trend going on. So no, I'm afraid we're not escaping anything, I'm afraid.
Mhm.
From a community organizing perspective, power structures like to divide people, and that was mentioned, you mentioned that, or at least talk mentioned it.
Could you speak up a little bit?
In terms of community organizing, power structures like to divide people.
Mhm.
Was it who mentioned about Pharaoh and, you know, the
Mhm.
slaves? The way you unite people who are very diverse, who lack power, is economic. Because the social political aspect of it is really when you get to the heart of it. And racism is terrible. But the way you build the base is by you point out who doesn't have it, who's lacking, and that builds the community together. And it's so important. You started off, I think you talked about having community. And I've heard so many people talk right now about how important it is to have community and to build our community. I just really want to emphasize that.
The whole film just went before me.
I can't hear you, Jane.
The whole film just went before me. I saw so much of, right after he was shot, I was watching TV.
Mhm.
I was a young person, you know, almost totally white community. And Roundville was just set apart. And I remember my mother saying, don't ever go down to Selby Way when you're out with friends. It was just absolutely a different country, and it changed my life. I can hear his voice, and I actually heard him speak when I was in college. My heart was broken. And what a decade the sixties, wow. And I think of the Kennedys, and I think of efforts to start, so I've heard people say, well, why weren't we moved? Well, many of us were, it changed my life. And I knew I wanted to do civil rights at that age, and it took me until I was 30 years old to prepare myself to be able to do something. And it's still so discouraging. George Floyd just broke my heart. And we have to recognize that. And I hope we can be allies. I hope we can be the team. I hope.
Yes.
Sort of counterintuitive set of ideas. Betsy just said, and I agree with her completely, that mobilizing around economic grievance is very powerful. And what it brought to mind was what Trump has done. Though of course he's backed by oligarchs and those who just want a tax break, etc. We all know that. But his calling card to the working class was it's sort of sickening to contemplate that was his calling. And that though we are, of course, are rightly concerned about race as a source of division, gender as a source of division, what at least I, in hindsight with the election, have realized is that there was a source of division that I wasn't fully engaged with, which was the division between a college degree and a high school diploma. And I'm sure we're all reading about that. And, we all, so that makes me go then to the second thing that you said, Marjorie, and that was not necessarily at the dinner table, but certainly for some of us, that might be the case, but just in general, and thinking about building bonds with those who actually were suffering by virtue of economic exclusions. It's horrible to think that in some sense, the Democratic Party, like Marie Antoinette said, let them order Instacart. When they were dealing with high food prices, that those who had college degrees, we don't like to think of ourselves as elites, but get over it. We absorbed those food prices and it was like, okay, yeah, but our stock market is going up, but if you're living paycheck to paycheck, those food prices were hitting you. And we were saying, look at the macroeconomics, or I should say we, but the Democratic, and I probably shouldn't bring the Democratic Party in, but I guess we just have to put the elephant in the room. I mean, the donkey. I guess where I want to go though is what you said. Which I thought was so beautiful. And that was to say curiosity. What is it like for you? What's going on? And getting and thinking about these conversations. And I'd like to say, if I may, one last thing. I totally believe I'm a Southerner, and I'm an immigrant from Mississippi, a foreign land, and I'm here to say it was interesting that the tragedy and truth. 64% of America did not approve of what King was doing this last year, but that meant 46% did, and that's unbelievable. That such a person who's stirring the pot is getting that. And I don't know if you all know this, but none other than George freaking Wallace ends up honoring Martin Luther King Day. And so we're really seeking and thinking in terms of conversion. A good conversion. And, you know, so back to what Mark said, you know, taught us about last week in terms of this really big challenge of loving your enemy. I think it does involve the curiosity and the real inquiry at a deep level of how can we build bridges with those with whom we disagree profoundly. So, I just needed to present all of that.
Yes.
Hi, so my name is Paul, and this is Lori, this is our first time here. So it's interesting in the short time it took to get to this room. Compassion that was already there and how someone led us to this room, the smiles that we've already gotten. And one of the reasons we decided to come here was because of this topic today. Of love your enemy. We're both chaplains, so I'm a hospice chaplain. And we're called to serve everybody who comes on to hospice. And so it's very interesting to go into the room and to hear, let's just say, the opposite news station playing very loud and having a Confederate flag on their wall. And we're called to serve all people. And so I sat down by this man who's 57 years old and totally fluent, and he'll be dead probably in the next week or two. And how he reached out his hand to me and said, will you pray with me? And will you be with me as I'm dying? And my brain is like, I don't want to be in here. Like, this person stands for all these different things, and I'm supposed to minister to this person. But then Jesus came into my head about forgiveness, and well, the woman who was at the well who had 5 husbands, and everybody was judging what a bad, you know, and Jesus just ignored them and looked right at her and saw her worth. So I don't know what I'm saying exactly, other than it's for me even confusing about how to go into these rooms where they even start off going, aren't you happy? You know, these twisted, screwed up people, and we finally won. And so it just, I think when we saw love your enemy as the topic of the conversation and the things we've learned about the Episcopal Church, we're like, you know what, let's get out of bed and go meet these people today, so.
If I can just kind of contribute to, if I can contribute to what Paul said and what other people have mentioned and how to build bridges and these things. So I'm in the spiritual care director at Serenity, Humboldt, not too far from here. My colleagues are in anyway. So what I think Paul's speaking to and others is to look kind of past and stay curious, like you said.
Just speak up a little.
To look past, you know, either look past what divides us and instead find a connection like Jesus might have. That we look at the heart and we need to love one another despite our differences. Despite who we might see as an enemy, despite, you know, whatever you think might be dividing us, and instead break those walls down and just truly find ways of loving kindness in our everyday life, you know, and just those small acts of love can really make a difference in anyone's life, no matter what their economic status or education status or otherwise. They have a Confederate flag. I've been in that same situation that Paul's mentioned, and you know, if we can go in and just see the human before us, whether it's a community setting or a one-on-one setting, you know, we can really just truly offer that love. think it's a beautiful way to put it.
Unless, we do this all the time, we get into conversations all the time at home, so this is the last thing I'm gonna say, that it is really hard. Because of what people stand for, and you know it's wrong, you hear the hurt and the bullying and all the hate and the goodness that's trying to fight against this hate is so difficult. So I think the thing is this is really darn difficult and tricky, how to show love for your enemy. And yet to be able to deal with the racism and the sexism and all the different things that go along with it. So it's so not easy, but thanks for letting us speak, and we already feel very loved and welcome here. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you for seeing us. And helping us to see ourselves.
Yes.
And you too.
You know, that famous, what's it in John, I'm the vine and you are the branches. I mean, if you can't imagine that somehow we have this connection to God, and that therefore we are all connected. It just seems to me to be at the foundation of what is true about life, our life, human life. And if we can't look at other people, knowing that with some compassion, no matter how they express themselves, understanding that, I think we're doomed. I mean, you have to have that some kind of, the word compassion is expresses it all. And I think you're absolutely right. You can disagree with somebody, but still value them as human beings that are somehow connected to us. And that by the foundation, that so that the upper stuff doesn't make you implacable enemies, or just you just see them as the other. They're not the other, they are us.
Yes.
So I love that we're looking back at Martin Luther King, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it's, many years ago, it's hard to remember in the early 60s, what he put together was what we call these freedom schools, where they taught nonviolence, but they taught about the beloved community. Because when I look out, the problem I'm having now is that I look out in the media or whatever, I'm seeing communities filled with hate. People, they're not hateful people, they are hate-filled people. And hate is like COVID, it's like a virus, it spreads so easily. And it is difficult to find a way to inoculate yourself against that. And to, hear the message of Martin Luther, the Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King, or hear the message of Gandhi, or hear the message that Jesus was preaching. I love what you said about you like to humanize your heroes, because if you read the 1st and 2nd John, he was talking about people becoming antichrists, right? And the reason that they became antichrist was not that they denied Christ's divinity, they denied his humanity. So I like to sit and listen to the stories of the gospel as Jesus being fully a human being. And how did he come and what was he talking about? So I'm trying to find communities that are filled with the beloved community. And, that seems to be the way to inoculate myself, because there's no way I'm going to avoid these other communities filled with hate, at least for the next 4 years. And how am I going to get through this? So coming here is one of the ways.
Amen. I have friends on Facebook who are just so full of righteous vitriol. And I think about how King never, to my knowledge, never used the word racist. He spoke of racism as a, to my knowledge, as a curse that was on everyone. And I think of all the ad hominems that I see within the sphere of people whose opinions I admire in so many respects. So I love what you said there. And I do come I came late this morning because I could hardly get out of bed because I'm depressed. Because actually I am in division right now with my mentor. She's furious at me because I won't line up with her definition of virtue. And I'm just it is so hard, and I just thought, I'm coming for you. And hallelujah.
I think,
Thank you.
I think that I think that what's going on right now is really interesting. I think for those people who are feeling fear and anxiety around where our country is going or who our country is, what comes to my mind is, like, welcome. This is how people of color have been feeling our entire lives.
Yeah.
This is how LGBTQ people have been feeling our entire lives. This is how many women, especially those who've known various types of assault, have been feeling our entire lives, which is fear, is kind of laced in the intersections of our identity. And I think Dr. King challenges us in our fear to push past that towards love, through curiosity, towards understanding. He doesn't want to make anybody be different. He wants people to see his humanity and the humanity of the people that he is standing in the gap for. He's not trying to deny anyone their rights to walk around in a white sheet. But what he is saying is that you don't have the right to bomb my home with my wife and children inside of them. Right? That is not the way that any of us really wants to live. And so I challenge us as people of faith to not just revere our heroes, but to really learn from them to help feed our daily lives and existence. I don't know how any one person ever votes or how they even think, right? But I have to walk through the world as who I am and accept them and respect who it is that they are, because my goal is to see the spark of God in everyone. That is my work. That is my work. I'm also a Southerner, right? Living in a strange land, even after 30 years, some things still feel very, very strange. And at the same time, very, very familiar. At the same time, very, very familiar. And so I think on this prophetic last speech, to find out that it was extemporaneous, that he just stood up there and talked about all of the things that he talks about in this speech, it's like he was trying to get everything out because he knew what was coming next. And so if you read the speech, if you listen to the whole thing, it's eerily pertinent to where it is we are today. And so I really, really think about, which I think is what's really different about culture in the North and in the South. I really, really think about how we withhold and stand in this Minnesota niceness, which is really kind of a cold, edgy glare, as opposed to, as a Southerner, you can walk down the street and people will inquire about your well-being 12 times, right? Like, good morning, how are you? How are you doing today? God bless you. Bless your little hearts, right? You will get blessed multiple times a day in the South, right? So how do we begin to extend ourselves? Because all of the isms are based on fear. They are based on fear. And so how do we begin to humanize ourselves and humanize one another and walk in the light of the radical love of Christ, to which people like Dr. King were attempting to do. Did you have something?
You know, I think I've lived expecting a miracle. And I think we should expect and practice what you've just suggested. Because I've experienced that. Our neighborhood is like that. And we, you know, I think we have to have a good image of ourselves first. And I think there are many of us who don't. So if you don't love yourself, you can't love somebody else. And that's a hard lesson to learn. The way we were raised, the way our parents were, just thinking of the difference of my parents' marriage. It was so easy. And they just, by magic, they matched. And they never argued. And so the way we're raised creates a lot of expectation of ourselves. And it's taken me 8 decades to get to where I feel I'm starting, should be. And I felt very strongly for a long time about the importance of the church. And I hope that we continue to listen and behave and practice exactly what we're talking about right now.
We're just about out of time, but I just wanted to say quickly that what I find myself returning to again and again for all the difficulties, however long now, is if I can see that the person whose words I really do not like are coming from a place of pain, that goes a long way. So it might manifest as in all kinds of grotesque ways that played on whether it's dividing I can see the pain from which these things come, or at least get some sense of it and fire into it. That's a step in the right direction. I agree with Phil. What Dr. King was so skilled at was conveying a sense that we are all one common humanity, and that one thing that means is that, as we talked about last week, when we hate, we actually hate ourselves in addition to hating the person, or we tear down ourselves in addition to tearing down the person whom we hate. He was so gifted, I think, at intertwining self-interest and the interest for the other, right? So we know we should care for the other. Dr. King just conveys again and again and again, it's you who's also going to suffer if you don't love the other, because of this common humanity that we all participate in. So there's no way to advance your own cause. If for those of us who might incline in that direction, might need a little self, intrinsic motivation. There's no way to advance your own cause without advancing the cause of all of humanity.
I think it's about seeing each other. I think you said that earlier about being able to see one another. Like our daughters are all in the LGBT plus community, and I think the most important thing, I remember walking in Target with my daughter, and I was the first person. She said, "Dad, I think I'm." And I looked at her and I smiled and I said, "That's beautiful." I said, "I will love you no matter who you are, who you love, what you think and what you're about." And so I think that's about seeing each other. And I told my daughters, I have your back. I will walk with you and I will be with you no matter what this journey brings about. And so it's a walking with is the word that comes to my mind. It's walking hand in hand together through all of these different things we're experiencing.
Like what you said too about loving yourself, and that maybe when we can love ourselves and we can better love each other and dismantle that fear that the other might have or we might have that's causing the resistance. to accept the other, find the common ground. You know, we can just find it, you know, if it's sounds too simplistic to say, well, let's find the common ground, you know, but to look within ourselves and see where our barriers are in order to be able to do it in a really meaningful way. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I think that's a wonderful last word. Let's be about the business of dismantling fear.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to. So, you know. Thank you.
Indeed.
That's why I agree with you.
You know, I don't like the first time. Yeah.
Thank you for
I will.
Yes.
But I will do that and get it over. Absolutely.
I really, I want to share this.
Okay. Okay.
You put so much work into sermons, presentations.
I try.
Oh, it shows.
I try. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Here we go. I've
I
done
know.
both.
I know. I'm going through that with my speaking sound. Writing.
Here we are.
I'm in the College of Education and Development for the Youth Studies.
Good morning.
Oh, my goodness.
Thank you for coming. And it's a great thing. So I would say, because I am going to be here.
I'm into this church stuff, so but what a church to be able to sit. and talk about things and
It's worth it.
see
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So how did you find us?
You know, we were.
Morning.
Organization.
May I give you a comment? I am a Southerner, but I have learned in Minnesota, don't just grab people. You have to ask permission and you have to be prepared for them to say no.
Yeah.
And so, that was great. That was absolutely great. And I would
Excellent.
hope you'll post what you.
Yes, I'll
I
send it.
noticed this incredible
Yeah, I'll send it over to the church.
reflection online.
Yeah.
It was just terrific.
Yeah.
So.
I will send it to the church, because like I was telling them about the actual question.
I met Craig through early music. Be the manager for the Rosan song.
Well, you could
Way back
put a
then.
period at the last of your.
Yeah, good old Georgia
presentation.
song.
I could all
Yep.
watch it.
Yeah, if it seems like it's so interesting, people come together, and Craig is a great connection.
Yeah.
If people come to this church, it's because it's something they saw online, but you guys would be on this.
Yeah.
Which speech are you looking at?
Thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
That's what I needed after there was a
That's looks like it.
Very
So,
good.
that's nice. I'm gonna grab some coffee.
And I'm gonna go to church.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, drink coffee, all righty.
Because I wanted to think about it.
So good to meet you.
Beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, oh my goodness, can I give you a hug?
Okay.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Thank you too.
So tell me your name. Lori. Lori.
Yeah.
It's only been one day, but you know.
One
I think
Chris.
we found it.
And I'll ask your name 3 times.
Sad.
We're excited to have you here.
Even this,
Yes.
we're gonna try.
Thank you for being here.
Good.
Taking the big leap and coming to.
You
Costco.
too.
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, hey.
Yeah.
Your name is
Marjorie.
Mark. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you.
Meet you and hear your
Thank you. Cheers. See you later.
Have a beautiful day.
And I will.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm just talking about how I'm saying it was beautiful, but I like.
Yeah.
Wait, where did you get that? It looks like you have green. Oh.
Yeah.